Hey guys, the Wood Craftsman here. So this is going to be my closing comments and conclusion of the Aqua Coat Water Base finish system. You know, I'll be honest with you. When I first started dabbling into this, when I got the materials and started looking at some spec sheets and things like that, I didn't really know what to expect. You know, other than the fact is I know that this company is strictly into water-based finishing for the kitchen cabinet and trim and millwork industry. I didn't really know much else as far as really how much homework had they done, how easy or how hard is their finish to apply. So I went into this testing with an open mind. I built 2 doors, a birch door and an oak door, and basically had sanded up the way I normally do. And because it was getting a water-based stain, I actually went up 1 grit farther than I normally do, just like I do with any other waterborne or water-based testing I did in the past. In my mind, I was thinking that, you know what, this is probably not going to be a whole lot different than any of the other water-based or waterborne finishes I've tried in the last several years. Now, let me kind of explain it a little bit. First of all, let's talk about the wipe stain. So this is the stain I chose. It's called Cognac. You know, it's kind of a golden brown. I just wanted something that had a little bit of depth to it. I wanted to see, you know, typically a darker stain wipes a little bit harder because of the pigment concentration, but I thought I'd just give it a shot. So as you saw in the video, I just actually put this in a gravity feed gun from Home Depot, one of the Husky ones, HVLP. I sprayed on a nice, probably a full wet coat, went to wipe it shortly after that, and I was really amazed how clean the wipe stain wiped off. There was none of the smearing around and fingerprint business. I mean, it literally, it wiped off very easily. The shop towels they use, they're called the Super Tough. It's just a traditional shop towel, lint-free. Wiped off really easy, wiped off clean. Like I said, didn't have any problems with fingerprints. And it seemed to be that it was a lot of open time there. So the stain part of it actually was kind of above my expectations. I did not expect it to perform as good as it did. As you saw in some of my previous videos, I've tested from other manufacturers and always had some, you know, water stains, got a long ways to come, but I was actually impressed with this stain here. So this stain, I don't know if it's made with a dye or if it actually is ground up pigments, but the one thing I noticed was when I opened up the can is I actually took a stir stick and scraped the bottom. I didn't really find anything on the bottom. So I don't know if the stain is truly really homogeneous or if it's, you know, basically if it does settle, it's very fine. It actually, you know, picks up really well, or if it's very slow settling. So the stain, as far as application, wiping, and settling, definitely was very nice and easy to work with. Like I said, the stain wiped clean, didn't really settle, didn't have any trouble with smearing or fingerprints. So those are all things that have typically been a problem with some solvents and a lot of waters in the past. Continuing about the stain, now you might look at this door and say, well, that panel's kind of nasty. And you might look at the oak and say, you know, the oak door doesn't look too bad. So the one thing I think I pointed out in a previous video is that this door style is not actually a current door style. It's actually the cope and stick, or the inside profile, was something I had set up from a previous door I built on a previous video. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to build a couple doors for this test I got coming up here. The problem I had was I didn't actually have any two-sided 3/16 thick sheet stock to go in these panels. This birch one actually looked to be birch on both sides, but when you look at this, it almost looks like I used the wrong side. I will say that this is not the color I was expecting to get out of this when it was stained. This actually was a lot darker color in general, but it almost looks to be that maybe this should have been the front, but that really wasn't my intention. There's actually a lot of splits and cracks, so I didn't want to put it in the front. This here now, again, this was a 1/4-inch back that's normally used for drawer boxes or cabinet backs that are just clear coated, and it definitely took the stain a little bit more. But if I would have used my traditional 1/4-inch MDF core 2-sided sheet stock, I think that this would have looked very similar to this. So I'm not ruling the stain out because of this. This is probably something, just maybe I didn't prep it quite the way it was supposed to, but I did know this going into it was going to be a little bit dark. So you know, the other thing too is You might say that, well, it's kind of blotchy, maybe it doesn't look that good. Again, I sanded these up to 180 grit, normally do 150, and I would have gone to 220, but I didn't actually have any 220 at the time when I built these and sanded these doors, and even prior to. So I just used what I had. So, you know, this is 180 grit, and this actually does not look that bad at all. Part of this actually could be maybe I was pushing the stain dry time a little bit. I think I coated these in, might have been 45 minutes later. I'm not sure. I could have probably waited a little bit longer and this might have dried out more, but I'm not for certain because looking at the back side, it's a little bit cleaner, not much. And I did actually spray these doors with stain probably about 10 minutes apart from each other. So I'm not sure if this truly is drying or if that's just actually the grain of the wood. I do see this on solvent as well though, so I don't know if that's really a good or a bad thing. The oak door, probably a lot more uniform. Typically, in general, a water stain, whether it's a waterborne or water base, typically they look really uneven and blotchy when they're wet, but when they dry out, they actually turn out pretty uniform for the most part. And the oak actually looks really nice. This is actually really uniform. So I was actually, you know, quite pleased with the stain overall. Now, the grain raising from the stain, that's always a concern that a lot of people have when they hear about water. Oh, water, it raises the grain so much and it's just hard to work with. There was grain raise here, I'll give you that, there was, but it wasn't anything horrible. If there was anything that needs improvement, it's actually on my end, and that's actually sanding the profiles. I did sand these, but I actually didn't sand them as good as I thought I was going to, or as good as I was intending to, because I was actually afraid of polishing them too much and actually not letting them take stain enough. Otherwise, I could definitely sponge sanded these profiles to probably 320 grit and probably not had grain raise issue and probably not really even a color issue. So the grain raise was actually minimal. There was some there. I think no matter how many manufacturers tell you that, oh, our finishes don't raise the grain, if it's got water, it's going to raise the grain, but it's basically how you deal with it. So there was a little grain raise with the stain, but it wasn't bad. All right, so the finish I used was the Aqua Coat Water Base lacquer in a satin sheen. So I used this as a self-seal. When I first sprayed out the first coat, it didn't look good. I'll be honest with you. It looked like it had a lot of bubbles in it. And I thought, well, you know, it's a sealed coat. There could be some debris in there as well. I did actually strain the finish before I loaded my pump up. There is actually a small filter up at the gun as well. I didn't think I should need to strain it, but I just wanted to give it just in case. But to my surprise, when I went to go spray the other side, those bubbles weren't there. But I just decided to go ahead. So when I went and sprayed the birch, I actually saw what looked like more bubbles. And I thought, wow, you're putting way too much on here. You're getting air entrapment underneath it. You can't do this. So when I went and sprayed the seal coat on the front of the oak door, I went and turned the fluid pressure down about 50 pounds. And didn't see near as much of it. Thought, okay, you know what? You can get by at, you know, instead of 550 at 500, or was it 600 to 550, whichever. You know, less was better. So I proceeded with that. When I went to sand the seal coat the next morning, yeah, it was rough like a seal coat, but it wasn't rough like excessive grain raise by any means. It seemed to be that any grain raising from the stain was actually buried in the seal coat. So it definitely, I didn't have an issue where in the past I've tested some stains, and like many years ago at a previous employer, the water stains would raise the grain so much that when you do it on oak, for example, that you would spray your water-based finish over that as your seal coat, and because there would be no solids in the finish, the finish had such low solids that your grain raise would come through that film, and when you do your seal sand, you'd actually knock the stain off that raised grain, so you'd have kind of like a highlighted effect, which obviously was not a good thing. And I didn't see that with this here. You know, it definitely, the first seal coat definitely hid the raised grain from the stain, and it chalked up really nice. I was able to use the Festool Granat in a P320. It chalked it up just like a sealer almost. So the first coat laid out really nice. Like I said, it looked like bubbles at first, but when it was completely dry and completely dried to sand, it was gone. So I went to go spray the top coat. I was basically spraying that reduced pressure. I think it was 500 pounds. I went and did the backs again, and I saw some more bubbles again. I thought, you know what? This is what it is, because I can't modify anything. I want to do this test as is. I don't want to reduce the finish. I don't want to add anything to it. I just want to spray it out as is. To my surprise, when I came back in to go spray the fronts, what I saw were bubbles on the back were completely gone. Okay, so now my memory's starting to kind of come back into play again. It's like, you've seen this before with some water-based finishes. So when I went and sprayed the front on the birch, I saw the same thing, and I saw like bubbles over the entire piece, and I thought, that door is not going to look good. But I thought, you know what, you can't do anything with it now because you're doing 2 coats, because that's what your current system is, so you're doing 2 coats and that's it. When I went and did the oak, I saw the same thing. I didn't see quite as many bubbles. There was a little bit in some of these spots here, but I thought, you know what, we'll see what they look like in the morning. 24 hours later, actually later on that night, I came back in just to take a look, and they were gone, completely gone. I mean, these are smooth as can be. So what am I trying to tell you? Basically, the bottom line is, Aqua Coat, if you're looking to get into waterborne or water-based finishing, take a look at Aqua Coat. I've never sprayed this stuff before. This is the very first time. Aqua Coat's not paying me to do this. This is just something I did on my own. This is my first impression on it. The fact that I didn't have to do anything to it, basically open it up, make sure all the solids are mixed in from the bottom, spray it out, wipe the stain, let it dry, spray the seal coat, sand it, spray the top coat, walk away from it. That's good. I've tested, other finishes in the past. One of them, doesn't matter who it was, but I had some issues with micro bubbling in the film. And no matter how many times I sprayed it in different ways I sprayed it, I could not get it to lay out. So being that I didn't actually read any of the data sheets, as far as what the recommendations were, I read after, where basically they were saying, should start with 120 grit and finish with 220 grit. Kind of missed that. I did start with 120 grit though. I just ended at 180. And somewhere along the line, I saw that if you're using airless or air-assisted airless, you should be using a 9 thousandths or 11 thousandths tip. Sand between coats with 320 grit or finer. Somewhere along the line, I thought I saw here they're supposed to do 3 to 5 coats. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Right here. 3 to 5 coats are recommended. So, this is 2. And I don't know, normal wear and tear. I think this would probably hold up just fine. I'm feeling the build on this. Now, this is like about 24 hours later. It's got a nice build to it. I was probably putting on all of 4 mils wet, but, had I used a 9 or 11 thousandths tip, maybe those bubbles weren't going to be there, but it was just nice to see that I didn't have to change a whole lot from what I currently do right now. The tip size I do use right now is actually a 15 thousandths orifice, so it's actually a big tip. I could not do that with this here, but I don't think I would need to. I think this stuff builds maybe a little bit quicker than what I'm currently doing. So overall, like I said, if you guys are interested in looking at water or venturing in the water or venturing into finishing and not sure if you want to do solvent or water, take a look at Aqua Coat. The thing with Aqua Coat is it's all water-based finishes. There's no solvents in it, no solvent families. It's all water. Container sizes from a quart or a pint all the way up to a 5-gallon pail or 55-gallon drum. Buy direct from the manufacturer, and it is freeze-thaw stable. The company is located up in Illinois, so they're in the upper Midwest, so they do get to see the cold winters. So they've obviously engineered it so that this stuff is freeze-thaw stable. So, for somebody who's never sprayed this up before, I was actually quite impressed. So, take this for what it's worth, but if you're definitely looking to try something that's readily available, take a look at Aqua Coat, see what they can do for you. Alright guys, that's my review on the Aqua Coat water-based finish system. Again, I was actually quite impressed not knowing what I was actually getting into. It definitely was something pretty easy to work with. Alright guys, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Questions and positive comments are welcome. Thanks for watching.